Hello and welcome to the show. Today's Forza 6 challenge is the Manufacturers' Cup. Each driver racing in this selected a manufacturer to represent. I went for Holden. We were to race across a series of 3 events and see which manufacturer would come out as the victor. Our first race, we were to use C-Class cars. We're going to start off with C, would move on to B, and then A-Class vehicles for this. And the race was taking place at the Hockenheim Short Circuit. The grid was set to random. My Holden was down towards the back, and I was trying to make my way through the field. I had an incredibly fast Commodore going in between a Ferrari and a Jaguar. That's probably one of my favourite overtakes I've ever done on anybody in a race. This Holden is a glorious car. There is so much grip in the Commodore. As I could go through that kind of a gap, I still had a long way to try and get through the field. The Ferrari was coming back at me at the inside of the hairpin. I was boxed in between a Pontiac and Maserati, and the Maserati had to go for a little bit of a rally cross as a Volvo and Audi got together that would see the Audi out of the race. It got very crowded. The Ferrari held it around the outside of me for both the final 2 corners as still we go side by side. The front was already that little bit more spread out. The Ferrari got a slight better drive and would get the place. Well done to the Ferrari for going around the outside of those final 2 corners. As expected, the early stages of the race, things were certainly rather busy further down as a Lamborghini was trying to make his way through the order fighter with the Lotus 11, Aston Martin DB5 up ahead as they come towards one of the fastest, trickiest corners on the track. The Lamborghini trying to get a good run. The problem is you can get to the inside there. It is a half overtaking chance, but when you get to the inside, you're stuck on the outside for the hairpin, and that's not where you want to be as the Lamborghini, sure enough, runs wide. Has immediately put the Lotus up the inside. Now the Lexus is coming to have a look. In the background, Jaguar's fighting with the Jeep, but a Toyota is almost 3 wide coming into this second to last corner. The Lotus tries to go around the outside of the Lamborghini. Doesn't work. I think it hits the curb, and the tiny Lotus 11 gets fired off the track. It was, lots and lots of stuff was going on in this early stages of the race. The Jeep was trying to make progress through the field. These Winnie Jeeps, we've seen them go quickly before, and this one was certainly going rather quick. Again, they don't have very good straight line speed. However, even in C-Class, being 4-wheel drive and you can get a half-decent amount of power in them, you can get incredible acceleration. So the Jeep got a phenomenal run out of the second corner, could draw it up alongside the Jag, couldn't quite get past the Jag down that back straight. The Jaguar had better top speed, but again, out of the next corner, the Jeep has that acceleration just to launch itself out of the corner and get up the inside of whatever vehicle it might be that is ahead of it. The Jeep then left a nice gap on the inside. Civic would follow the Jeep through on the Jaguar. The Jeep then would outdrag a Pontiac up the next section. It was an incredible amount of acceleration going on from the 4-wheel drive Jeep. The Civic was trying his best to follow the Jeep on the march through the field. We round the final corner. Again, the Willys Jeep trying to do the same thing to the Lexus up ahead. Couldn't quite do it. Lexus, a little bit more straight line speed and could get out of range by the time they came down towards the first corner. That didn't really matter to the Jeep because that acceleration was so very powerful. This was the battle for 3rd place between a Mazda RX-7 and a Ford Mustang, and it went on like this for quite a large part of the race. Both cars very evenly matched, and the Mustang simply couldn't find a way past the Mazda. He tried everywhere, he looked everywhere to try and get a pass done. The Mustang's on 2 wheels around that first turn, but the Mazda can defend in towards the next corner. Both evenly matched with straight line speed and so on. The Mustang, was really having trouble trying to find a way past that Mazda. I'm going to go with distinctive dodge as opposed to hideous, but either word is is applicable, I think, was in the mid-pack, and it was his turn to come under fire from that Jeep. The Dodge had great straight line speed, caught up to the Aston Martin down this back straight, but was struggling through the corners. I suspect it could well have still been front-wheel drive. Was not able to carry as much corner speed as the Jeep. Sure enough, we see that Willys Jeep doing exactly the same thing it had been doing all race. Just pounces as soon as it can get to the inside of a car with that incredible acceleration. That would get past the Dodge. The Ferrari's to the inside as the Dodge leaves a little bit of a gap. The tiniest, I don't know if it's the tiniest of bumps or just understeer from the Dodge, cause it to go out wide and drop a heap of positions. And that's not what you want. When the field is as close as it was back here, small mistakes are going to cost you an awful lot. That's a huge number of positions. And now the Dodge has got a Toyota for company as well. I had a phenomenally quick car. The Holden was one of the fastest cars on the track. However, while I'd had a good start, made my way quite well through the field, I got stuck behind a Lancia Fulvia. This had been going on for a couple of laps. I could not find a way past this damn Fulvia. I was trying everything, much like we'd seen the Mustang trying to get past the Mazda. I could not break the Fulvia. I got a good run through the first corner that puts me on the inside for the second turn. The Holden had got fantastic brakes, could carry a huge amount of corner speed. Problem was, the Fulvia had better acceleration, had better straight line speed, so while I could pass it through the corners, the Lancia would come back at me, and if the Lancia defended, I couldn't make the most of my corner speed, which then meant my lap times wasn't as good as they could be. It was, yeah, a little bit it was good fun. It's great fun battling, a little frustrating though, when you're trying to get through the field. I saw an opportunity, but I didn't quite have the acceleration on the Lancia to dive to the inside. Again, I have to go on the brakes more than I really want to be doing, down towards the hairpin. Again, the Lancia is covering the inside. All the meantime, the Willys Jeep was catching up to us while we were doing this. I thought about going around the outside. It was never likely to work though at the hairpin. Again, I'm still trying, looking. My favourite of the overtaking spots, a dive at the inside at the second to last corner, wasn't on with the Lancia defending, but he defended a little bit too hard, ran too wide through that corner. That gave me the opportunity, and I was going to take any opportunity that came my way to get up the inside, and I would get the pass done. Lancia would come back at me with his straight line speed, but forcing him to go to the outside at turn 1 was never really likely to work for the little Fulvia, so I would finally get that position. At the front, there was another great battle going on. Again, this is a battle that went on for a number of laps with a BMW unable to pass a Volkswagen Beetle. A BMW is a very, very quick car as well. Me and him had very similar fastest laps. The BMW, though, was throwing everything at the Volkswagen, but he couldn't find a way past. It's unusual. At Hockenheim, normally overtaking isn't too bad, but yeah, this race, there was quite a few cars that got sort of stuck in traffic. In the end, on this final lap, BMW tried to go around the outside of the hairpin. In the end, I think they both outbraked themselves a little bit, pushing the cars to the absolute limit and almost a little bit beyond. And the BMW running that tad bit wide through the hairpin cost him any chance of trying a manoeuvre through the last couple of corners, which meant that the Volkswagen was to take victory in round number 1 ahead of the BMW. The Mazda would hold on to third, with the Mustang coming home in fourth, and my Holden rounding out the top 5. Race number 2 would go to the Sonoma Short Circuit. Unfortunately, Maserati would have some controller issues. Also got my Holden into quite a lot of trouble down there. It's so slow off the line. The rest of the field, though, would make it up through this first corner relatively cleanly. Sonoma is always an interesting first corner. This one, so many different lines can be taken through there, often leads to a bit of bumping, but on the whole, everybody made it through pretty well. This time out, the Stratos we're following here dipped a wheel over the curb, bounced it around a little bit. That gave space for an Aston Martin to put his car up the inside. He would take that position. One of the better overtaking spots on the track, that one. Having gone from Hockenheim, that is normally relatively easy to overtake, Sonoma is a much tougher track to get passes done. This was with the B-class vehicles, very fast. This, I say very fast, is mostly kind of medium speed-ish corners, but there's very little in the way of braking for a lot of them. So yeah, getting passes done is quite difficult. I had a lot of work to do. I pretty much dropped to the back of the field off the start line, having got stuck behind the slow starting Maserati. So yeah, I was keen to try and make up some positions going for the Holden Tirana in this one, behind an Audi that got all sorts of wrong through the S. It's got a really big slide. I having to try and take avoiding action, trying to maintain speed as a Ford doing a little bit of rallycross. Pontiac's getting involved, going past a Lotus. It was all manner of crazy on these first few laps. The Audi in the end just ran out of grip, too much understeer through the fast corners. It would see him off. Now I was coming under increasing pressure from the Mustang. The Ford tried to go around the outside. It wasn't really quite going to work for the Fox body there. That would allow me to get a little bit further ahead. I was going after a Jaguar E-Type. My Holden had a huge amount of torque, not so much power, fantastic acceleration in this car. Didn't have quite the top speed of some of these other vehicles. I was, again, trying to make the most of out-dragging cars out of the corners. Unfortunately, my Holden did have another problem in that it really wanted to be a motorbike. It had so much grip roll that it was a real difficult thing to get through the corner. Spent a lot of time on two wheels, which was yeah, quite a scary one, really. Further up through the field, while we were still battling behind, there was a Mazda RX-7 that was doing his very best to try and keep as larger a pack of cars behind him as he could. The Ferrari had briefly broke free. The RX-7 tried, squeezed himself to the inside as they run up towards this first quarter section. The Ferrari runs a little bit too wide. That gives the opportunity to the RX-7. He dives up the inside, will get the place ahead of a very, very quick Ferrari. Behind that, a Nissan puts a wheel on the grass, and putting a wheel on the grass is not a good idea around here, not with these high-speed corners. Drops the Nissan back slightly to fighting with the Alfa. Somebody, I think that might have been me, that was off on the grass. The Mazda gets things a little bit wrong, seeing plenty of people having a few issues down there. I mean, these are cars that we haven't necessarily driven on a track. We haven't necessarily driven them. So, yeah, we were not quite getting the braking right. In the end, the Mazda ran a little bit too deep into the next corner, was out of position. The Ferrari, very, very good under brakes, would reclaim the position. The Mazda pretty much pushing the Ferrari through that section. And despite his best efforts, the RX-7 would run out of grip, have to take to the grass a little bit. In the background, I got in trouble and got turned around and dropped through the order. And the groups continued to remain relatively close this time out. The Ferrari, once he kind of found his footing, was absolutely flying around this circuit as the Subaru up ahead got too much understeer, ran wide. Again, almost an identical overtake, this one, for the 250 Testarossa, with the Subaru out wide. Plenty of space for the Ferrari to get to the inside. Ferrari good under brakes and so on. Subaru tries to come back with that four-wheel drive traction, that acceleration down this next section. And you can get overtakes done there. That was probably my best overtaking spot on the track in the Holden, using the acceleration down there, but it is tough if you don't have a huge acceleration advantage. This was the battle for fourth. The third place Corvette was having a little bit of a lonelier race this time out. The Aston Martin trying his very best to fend off from a Honda Civic as we come down towards this final hairpin. The Ferrari very quickly joined up to this group, very nearly going three wide down towards the final corner. In the end, the Civic has got the speed to get himself ahead of the Aston Martin. The Aston's then got to start worrying about that Ferrari. The Ferrari going around the outside almost changes his mind as they go through this first and second corner. In the end, cuts back to the inside for the run out of turn two. That would be the wise thing to do. Going around the outside of turn one is incredibly tricky to pull off. Not a particularly fun manoeuvre. So yeah, a wise decision for the Ferrari that would put him through. The Mazda continued to make a really rather large train of cars throughout the entire race. The E-Type, the Alfa, the Pontiac all took turns at trying to find a way past this RX-7, and none of them could quite get it past. The Pontiac going around the outside of the Alfa losing two positions. Alfa tried to go for an overtake on the Jaguar, and the problem is, with such a crowded bunch as we had here, when you try to go for an overtake, if you overcommit yourself, you end up being a little bit slow. And when there's so many cars ready to pounce, all it takes is you to be a little bit slow through one corner. Someone's going to dive up the inside. That'll make you slow through the next corner. Someone else is going to dive up the inside. And the Alfa's now almost, dropped to the back of this group, is under huge pressure now from my Holden. The Jaguar was coming under fire from the Pontiac. The Alfa was fighting back against the Ford. Jag ends up out wide through turn one, not where you want to be, particularly around that part of the track. That would put the Pontiac back ahead. The Alfa was in front of the Ford. I was sliding the Holden around at the front, and we were to have a grandstand finish between a Dodge Dart and, a Jeep Wagoneer. Not the normal two vehicles that you would expect to see running at the front of a race, but There we go. The Wagoneer had been catching the Dart throughout the race. The Dart had a good start, managed to kind of break away from the field, but was being caught by the Wagoneer up until the final lap, where the Jeep was now throwing everything at the Dart to try and find a way past as they run down towards the final corner. Pretty much the last chance to do anything about the car ahead. The Dart goes very, very defensive into this corner. The Jeep has nowhere else to go other than try to go around the outside. The Dart gets a little bit of a slide out of the final corner, puts the Jeep up alongside. The Jeep, with that four-wheel drive traction and power, will get side by side as they come across the line. It was incredibly close between the pair of them, but it would go to the Jeep. That little bit of a slide out of the final corner cost the Dodge Dart, I think, the victory in this one. That is a tiny, tiny margin of victory between the two cars. The Jeep having that little bit better acceleration, be able to put more power down out of that corner, allowed him to go around the outside of that hairpin. There's not very often you see an overtake all the way around the outside of the hairpin. So, yeah, the Wagoneer would take victory over the Dodge Dart, with the Corvette coming home in third place. This group, we maintained our fight right up until the end of the race. I was still stuck at the back of the train, unable to make progress. The Mazda was continuing. Well, the Mazda had been slowing us down. He managed to break away a little bit while the Pontiac fought with the Jaguar. The Alfa was in the mix. I used my acceleration in the Holden to out-drag the Mustang, the Ford, going a little bit wide, kicking up some more dust as we're almost side by side down there through the S's. It's not a fun place particularly to be side by side. I spotted an opportunity. You can see how hard we were pushing. The Alfa runs wide. I ran a little bit wide, trying to get on the throttle quicker than I probably should have been. And again, the Alfa pushes it a little too hard, under braking around the hairpin. That gets me up alongside, while the Maserati is going past, I think, a Nissan into the hairpin. I tried to repeat the maneuver. The Jeep had managed. I couldn't quite make it. The cars up ahead had an accident coming towards the line. 3 cars into 1 didn't quite go, which meant the Civic plummeted through the orders at the very, very end there. A little bit unfortunate for some of them. It was certainly an interesting finish for me. Our third and final race in this mini-series would go to the Yas Marina circuit for a night race. My Holden, another car, another very, very much torque monster, this one, incredibly fast off the line, made up a huge number of positions. Quite a lot of cars around the outside of turn 1 as we run through the S's section of this track. The Monaro was actually holding up pretty well. I'd had a very, very good start. Probably my best start of the evening, really. There's the MR2 to the back of shot, having all sorts of issues. I got stuck on the outside of a Honda, couldn't quite make it stick. A Pontiac was then on the inside. We were almost 3 wide coming through the hairpin. My Holden, once again, fantastic drive off of the corners, but again, another car that didn't have a huge amount of straight line speed, so that the S2000 would go flying past. The Pontiac was quicker than me as well. They'd both go up and catch up to the Chevelle, the Aston Martin, the Mustang, all up ahead. I wasn't too bothered though about that. My Monaro had that fantastic drive off of the turns, which would come in very handy. The Lamborghini was in the midfield battle this time out. Again, as we'd seen in previous races, the midfield battle, certainly on the opening lap, is often rather ferocious in these first couple of laps. The Lexus and a Subaru were doing battle. The Countach dives to the inside at the final corner. Lexus tries to go around the outside. Subaru tries cutting back to the inside. Subaru very nearly gets it to work. He's sort of there or thereabouts. Doesn't quite have the acceleration to really fight with the Lamborghini. The Lexus had fantastic straight line speed. He goes up the inside as they come into turn 1, but couldn't quite make it stick. Subaru holds it around the outside of the Lexus as we run through these next corners, and just that little bit of battling between those two cars, both of them tried to find a way past the Lamborghini, actually gave the Lamborghini a relatively nice safety cushion over the pair of them. For this race, of course, the cars were up to A-Class, so these were some fairly fast vehicles, really. A Dodge Viper, having started well down the order, was trying to make his way up as fast as he could. He got stuck behind a Jaguar F-Type at this stage of the race. Thought about having a big dive up the inside, gets his car alongside. Problem is, when you do have a go at that part of the track, he'll get stuck on the outside for the next part of the corner. He does, though, get away with it. If you can hold it around the outside, of course, it will put you on the preferred line into the hairpin, and sure enough, that would allow the Viper to get past and start to run away from the Jaguar, and the Viper was very quickly catching up towards the Lamborghini up ahead. The Dodge with a lot of straight line speed, the Countach with not quite as much. As the Viper comes flying past, the Lexus would outdrag the Jaguar F-Type as well down this back straight. Viper runs a little bit wide through the corner, but the Countach can't really do anything about it, especially now they're coming back onto another long straight. My Holden was flying around this circuit. I got myself up into third place and was proceeding to try and chase down a BMW M3. The BMW had a huge amount of straight line speed, but was really struggling through the corners, so I wanted to employ my incredible acceleration from the Monaro, and I spotted an opportunity to throw my car up the inside. There was nothing really the BMW could do about it. The torque from this Monaro was incredible. It had such good initial launch off of a turn that any opportunity I got, I was going to be going for, and it had got me up into second place. Mercedes was running in this race. It started relatively well, but was lacking straight line speed, and around Yas Marina that can sometimes be a little bit of a problem as we come onto this main straight. He did find someone that was slower than him, though. The Mustang was really struggling for straight line speed around this circuit. The Mercedes started catching the Ford, the RX-8, and the Viper, though, were absolutely flying the RX-8 to the outside. The Viper over there as well as they come under brakes down towards the chicane. Mercedes, probably one of the nicer handling cars, could just about fend them off through the corner, but now the Dodge was getting involved. The Ford had managed to weather that particular turn, but he had run wide, was a little slow off the corner. Here comes the Viper on the inside. The Mazda's between the Ford and the Mercedes, manages to get it all right. A little bit of a bump between the Mercedes and the Ford. It's now 3 wide into this tight chicane section as the cars bump one another through the chicanes. The Mazda and Ford come out the other side by side. In the end, the Mazda managing to get his car ahead, and they had been enjoying a relatively large gap back to the pack behind, which, as you can see, immediately vanished after about 3 corners. It was a little calmer race, though, this one. At the front, it was the Pontiac Firebird that was to go on to take victory in the closing laps. I had been catching. My Holden was incredibly fast around this track. I think it was the only car to get under the 2 minutes 20 around a lap here. I was catching a couple more laps. I might have got the Pontiac, but in the end, I just ran out of time to do anything about it, meaning the Pontiac would take victory. I would claim second. This was the tussle for third on the final lap. It all closed up and got very interesting at the very end. The Honda had a huge amount of straight line speed, was struggling through the corners, though. The Ferrari spotted his opportunity, had a go up the inside, and would just about make the manoeuvre stick. The Viper was coming, the Aston Martin was still in there. The BMW had unfortunately been shuffled down the order with a little bit of a laggy bump, had put him to the back of this group as a Lancia was joining in as well. The Lancia's trying to find a way past the Aston. The Viper's all over the back of the Honda. The Ferrari can enjoy that little bit of quiet at the front of this group for that third position. The Honda runs too deep into the final corner. That allows the Viper to get past for fourth. The Ferrari, though, would take the third. Viper fourth. Honda coming home in fifth, ahead of the Aston Martin in sixth, and I believe the Lancia in seventh place. And it was all very much going on in the final lap. It had been a mostly quiet race through the midsection. Cars had been close, but it had been mostly quiet. But everybody decided to have a go to attacking on these final couple of corners. The Lexus getting a bit of an oversteering moment. Lamborghini now trying to find a way past. Didn't really fancy the outside at the second to last corner. Can't say I blame him. Goes for the sensible option. Cuts back to the inside on the last turn. He gets his car there, but the Lexus' turn to do the cutback. Lexus has the acceleration. Lamborghini can't quite hold it. The Lexus would get the position. The Alfa in the background would fend off the Mercedes as well. And even further back, it was exactly the same story with this group. I think it was fighting over about 17th place between the Nissan, the Subaru, and the Lotus as we round these final couple of corners. The Subaru spots an opportunity. He wants to go to the inside. He overdoes it, though. Just clips the back of the Skyline. Subaru gets sideways. The Nissan gets sideways. The Lotus is quick through the corner, and the Evora would outdrag the Subaru towards the line. It was, yeah, the final lap was certainly a rather interesting one. Anyway, on to the all-important results. And our victor in all of this would be the Ferraris. The Ferrari would claim victory by 6 points. While not a fantastic first race, consistency throughout the evening is what would do it for the Ferrari, with a victory claiming 166 points. I used the V8 Supercar, their point system they use for the sprint races, to calculate these results. Me and Dodge would be tied for second place at 160 points. My slightly iffy run at Sonoma had cost me a chance of victory. The Dodge's understeering moment at the hairpin at Hockenheim had cost him, or you could also argue that his failure to outdrag the Jeep, that also would have put him to the top. Tiny little moments cost people this whole championship, which I think is incredible. Mazda would come home in fourth. 9 points separate the top four in this. Pontiac in fifth after a mistake at Hockenheim had dropped him down. The Pontiac stood a very good chance of doing well. The BMW, a poor run at Sonoma, equally cost him in sixth. Honda, they suffered quite a lot of bad luck in this one in seventh. Aston Martin in eighth, ahead of Lancia in ninth. If the Jeep hadn't disconnected in the final race, if he'd got a top 10, those Jeeps could have quite easily taken victory ahead of Volkswagen. So an unfortunate crash at Sonoma that ruined his run here. Further down the order, we find the Alfa Romeo in 12th. Not a particularly spectacular. I kind of expected Alfa Romeo to perhaps do a little bit better in this one, but yeah, the Alfa was quite a bit down the order in all of the races. Subaru claiming 13th. A good run at Sonoma, struggled elsewhere, ahead of Jaguar and the Lexus. Ford sadly disconnected in the final race, so yeah, a little bit down on that. Chevrolet didn't take part in the first race and had some bad luck at Yaz with a crash. Saw Chevrolet in 17th. Lamborghini down in 18th, perhaps didn't quite have the cars for this low class of racing, ahead of Toyota. Nissan would round out the top 20 ahead of Lotus. Lotus had a little bit of bad luck in this one, certainly, as did Audi with a roll out of the first race. In 23rd place, we find Maserati, again disconnected in the final one. Mercedes didn't take part in the first race, had some bad luck in the second one, and a little bit of a lack of straight line speed in the third. So our overall victor for this would go to the Ferrari. An incredibly close championship and an awful lot of fun, actually. This was great fun to do. Fascinating looking at the results. How quite a lot of us, certainly in the top 4 or 5, you could pretty much see where our championship went wrong with one moment almost. It was incredibly close. It was a ridiculously close championship, or mini championship, I should say. And yeah, a really rather good time. I'm quite glad to see Dodge and Holden towards the front. I would like to have taken victory, of course, but a joint second place with Dodge is not too bad for me. Anyway, that is it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.